Indigenous history before we go over Benjamin Bannaker's just by picture, so you can see how the indigenous peoples of America were portrayed. Because when you're dealing with this Columbus philosophy and psychology, one thing that you're dealing with is the destruction of the history of the Moors. Now, as it resurfaced of our Moorish history in Spain and Africa and other places, they worked diligently to hide it here. And one of the ways they hide it is by calling the people Indians, but not letting you know that they spoke Arabic, that they wrote in an ancient Arabic script, all right? And even the names and other cultural identities go right into the epic prior to colonization, which is basically Islam, but worldwide, okay? So I'm going to this picture I don't have. This is a picture in one of the second oldest portrays of the Native Americans in the 1600s. And of course you see a woolly head man. This is a warrior as we pass it around. Let me get it on the camera one time before we pass it around so Ron can see us zoom in on it. And this is a depiction of what the Indian looked like in the 1650s.
Look like your grandfather.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's the depiction. And as we go further, we're going to show you some pictures. This is Mahaska. This is 1824. This book is from the book called The Red Man of Iowa. Mahaska fought in 18 battles with the Europeans and never lost one with his father. He was a part of the Lenape faction that were in Kansas called the Iowa. Okay? And the reason why you have the Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy is in Kansas and she wanted to go back to Kansas, and the gold, the yellow brick road leads back to Kansas, is because something very significant happened in Kansas with the Moors. The word Kansas is actually an Arabic word that is kanasa. Kanasa means treasure in Arabic. And when you go back to that history, all you're dealing with is the Lenape Moors who were in Kansas, who in 1854, a war broke out between them and the white people, okay, which led to the Civil War. These are also the ancient lands of the indigenous peoples who had been placed in certain areas during the Trail of Tears, but this is one of the chiefs. That's a brother. Next slide. Depictions of Missouri natives in 1830. These paintings all come from the 1800s or 1700s or earlier. Next slide. Halada-Miko, a Seminole. The real name for the Seminoles are Yamasee. This picture was taken in the 1850s. A daguerreotype photo. Look at the gear. None of this stuff was made by Europeans. What did they make their clothes at? How did they make it? They make you think that we was a bunch of savages running around, didn't know how to do nothing. But the story is reversed. Next slide. Miko Nabi, also Yamasee. This is 1836. Look at the brothers and sisters. One of the things that they wanted to destroy was the fact, absolute fact. Check this out, because this is going to blow your mind. That from 1492 to 1515, with Columbus, Vespucci, and then the Jesuit priests coming, the records have been kept of what happened when they were here. And the records are kept in what's called, a book of writers called the Jesuit letters. And in the Jesuit letters, the people who they interacted with in Brazil, Central America, and throughout North America, there were three names that they gave them. The Americans, the Negroes, and the Indios. The first people they interacted with, they called them Negroes because this is the name that they used for Moors when they were trying to use words of denationalization. Negroes. So there has never, check this out for historical clarity, there has never, ever been a time where Europeans can prove that our people have not been in this land. I want you to think about that. This is before slavery. There was no slavery. They were just coming. And we was already here. And then check this out. A book for you to get. Africans and Native Americans by Jack Forbes. The slave trade actually started by taking these Negroes from the Americas back to Europe. So it's the other way around. It started here, taking our people back to Europe, and then later they started taking people from Africa. Because they had to break what was going on here. That's why they never teach you real American history. They teach you about a bunch of red Indians running around. I'm not disrespecting the people who are here, but that's how the language that they use. But let's see what really went on. Keep going. Mohawk chiefs, taken from the Library of Congress. Brothers and sisters. Next slide. Now check this out. This is what they do. This is Taya Denaga, all right? This brother was a Mohawk, a chief. The European name that they call him is Joseph Brant. This is a depiction of him in London in the 1700s. Now, this is what they do in history. You have an Aboriginal person in history, they repaint them European, and this is the thing that you see when you go on Google. This is what you see when you go on the internet, or when they publish a book for the public school system. But when you want to get these authentic portraits, you don't see the nose and the lips and the skin to see that this is an original man. So these are the tricks we play. So they say, oh yeah, I saw Joseph Brant. He looked almost white. But this is just a painting done in London of him. So this is what they do to history. Reconstruct and reconfigure. Somebody took a conscious effort to say, he is an original man, black, or however you want to look at him, I must make him white so that they will never know that this is their ancestor. So the native people look like this now in America. If we keep going the way we go, people in Africa are going to look like this. And this is going to be the African American, and then there won't be no indigenous people or Aboriginal people. Next slide. But look at what they wrote. William Penn, you came here, you're a Rosicrucian. What did you say in your first report to the Free Society of Traders about the Lenape? For their persons, they are generally tall, straight, well-built, and of singular proportion. They tread strong and clever, and mostly walk with a lofty chin, of complexion black. This is 1683. Keep going. But by design as the gypsies of England. Who are the gypsies of England? The Egyptians in England. Two books that you can get on that history, Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 1 and Volume 2. David McRitchie talks about the Gypsies and the Blackamoors in ancient Europe. So the real Europeans are also black. Where did these people come from then? But they're not indigenous nowhere, and they keep lying. But their books tell you, okay, if the Lenape are black, how did they get white? What happened? That means there's a whole bunch of Lenape running around here thinking that they African American. Because they don't know their Moorish history and their indigenous history. That's what happened. That's what you call wiping out of history and genocidal activity. That's what it is. But nobody wants to say it happened to you, because these people have such a great ego. Even though they know you're great, you must be their slave. Next slide. But they worship you secretly. This is the first depiction of the Sons of St. Tammany Society. St. Tammany was the chief that William Penn met with. So if they was black, then he was black. And he's downtown standing on Front Market Street on the turf with a big hawk on his shoulder. And this is what they say. As all nations have for 7 centuries past adopted some great personage remarkable for his virtues and love for civil and religious liberty as their tutelar saint, and annually assembled on a fixed day to commemorate him, the natives of this flourishing province, determined to follow so laudable an example, for some years have adopted a great warrior, Sakem. Now, if you know history, the Egyptian word for king is Shakem. Same word in Algonquin. And chief is a mispronunciation of Sharif. They couldn't say it. There's no etymology for the word chief. It's Sharif. And when you go to the Algonquin, you can see it. Name St. Tammany, a friend, I can't even read what that says, something friend of our forefathers, to be the tutelar saint of this province, and have hitherto, on the 1st of May, done the accustomed honors of the memory of so great, celebrated a personage. And for the same purpose, you are requested to meet the children and associated sons of St. Tammany on Saturday next. It goes on, etc., etc. The head of the Sons of St. Tammany Society was Ben Franklin. He was the head of the society. And again, St. Tammany was the Moor that they made their first treaty with the Quakers and the Germans who were coming here. Next slide. The tribes, all the tribes were black. This is the Choctaw, and this is an original quote from John Sibley, who was the writer for Meriwether Lewis and Clark, who were of the United States military in 1803. So this is them coming from the eastern seaboard out of the colony, said, we got to find out what's going on in the West. And when we go, we're going to take this man, York, with us. Nobody knows who he was. All right? His father was named Yusuf Ben Ali, who married to Aya Maria, who is ancestor of Noble Drew Ali and Tierra Verde Asi of the Washita. That's their son, York, who took these people all around to speak to these native tribes because he spoke Arabic. This is why Esteban, in the National Treasure, they depicted him with the Spanish being able to go and talk to all the tribes because he spoke Arabic. He was from Morocco. The tribes spoke Arabic. I'm going to show it to you as we go on. I'm going to show you the actual list. But this is the Choctaw, which we call Washita, which is actually Shabta or Shabbat. Shabbat in ancient Egypt were the figurines that represented the king or the pharaoh in the afterlife. All right? Well, look at the Choctaw, because that's a mispronunciation of the original term. This is what they say. They are rambling hunting parties of them to be met with all over Louisiana. Now, when you say Louisiana in 1803, you must understand that it was not the little shoot-boot state. It's everything west of Tennessee all the way to California. They didn't know what was over there. We knew. They are at war with the Caldugis and liked by neither the red nor the white people. Now, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is that one part of the sentence. We could do a whole book on it to show you what happened in the 1800s on how you lost your nationality and your knowledge of your history. Because what they were doing, the Iroquois Confederation with the Moorish tribes of the Algonquin Confederation was murdering you off and putting these people as heads of your tribes and selling your lands illegally. And it's all in the literature that they was doing it. And they kept getting communication that the people had no authority to sell land. But this is what Lewis and Clark wrote down. Choctaw, original people. Lenape, original people. How did they get white then? Because when you go to the reservation now, you don't see us there. You see us in the hood. And we don't know what happened. Next slide. So, we got to find out some true founding fathers for our culture so we can rename and redo this stuff. Next slide. Now, you'll find that Benjamin Bannaker in his letters focus on his African history. Now, this is very, very important during the time period, all right, for the so-called free Negroes. I'm going to bring this up later. We can go to the next slide. Check this out. This picture is from 1780. And what we're going to show you is a theme that was going on during that time period to depict certain high officials with Moors and Aboriginal people for some reason. Now this picture, again, is 228 years old. Painted by this painter named John Trumbull, who is the official portrait maker for this boy right here. What you see in the back, this red turban with the feather on top, and you can't see it, but on the original picture there's ships with red flags on it, which is the Moorish flag. So what are you depicting? What is the mystery about this Lord? A part of the mystery is stuff like this. This is from the congressional records where the United States paid $20,000 for the Treaty of Marrakesh, also known as the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 1787. Because they had to pay tribute to the Moors in Africa. But they paid tribute to the Moors here too. I got the records right in my hand. So you don't pay tribute to somebody who's weaker than you pay tribute to somebody who's stronger than you. You had to pay what we call the jiza, the tax. Pass it around. Exhibit A. Next slide. Watch this. Whoa, watch out. This is from right down on Broad and Market. We had to steal this picture. You're not supposed to bring cameras in there. May's son, my son, George Washington, Andrew Ellicott, and you know who. Not only are they there, it's all kind of communications. Why are they forming a triangle? Because you're going to see this triangle later, which is in D.C. and Philadelphia. Why is he standing? This is the map of the Potomac, which is showing the layout that's being surveyed for Washington, D.C. All right? There's all kind of communications in this picture. But this is right down in the Masonic Hall, the oldest Masonic Hall in Philadelphia. And you got Ben Bay right there, Benjamin Bannaker standing there, handing these guys a map to something. Next slide. Another picture. Surveying Ellicott, George Washington, you know who. Bannaker. This is a sketch from the 1800s. Next slide. This is an original from 1816. Now, right now, they're changing this picture. I'm glad I got it. Because this gentleman right here I'm about to point to you, who is Benjamin Bannaker, also known as Prince Whipple, whose name is on the Declaration plaque downtown on the wall in on City Hall, who signed the Declaration of Independence. This man right now in this original picture is a Caucasian. I wish I could have clipped the other one down for you. Give me the next slide. It's a close-up. There you go right there. You see him. Now, allegedly, Prince Whipple was a slave of William Whipple. Told you how they do the history, right? See, but you can't hide it because it's public record. Prince Whipple was never a slave. How do I know? Because the first census says it.
He's got a turban on in that picture.
I don't know what kind. It's like a round hat right here, and it looks like it's wrapped right up like a turban. Like, you know, the regular wrap that we wear. But right here, column 4 at the bottom, Prince Whipple and Cuff Whipple are free persons because their mothers were free persons. He was never a slave. So they made that history up and tried to make him into a white boy to justify that and tell you that nobody black signed the Constitution. But in fact, signed the Declaration of Independence. Now, we're going to show you who Prince Whipple really is, because he's really Bannaker. That's why he keeps being depicted with this boy right here. But this is just Masonic communication. That's all it is. That's what the purpose of it is. And there's other aspects of history that we're about to go over. Next slide. Also, the Battle of Bunker Hill. The Battle of Bunker Hill was one of the most decisive battles because the so-called Americans got power during that time period, and they gave credit to this black soldier who was doing amazing feats during that time period under this flag that had this tree that's on a red banner. Next slide. This is another depiction of him, early depiction. What they call Salem. Next slide. Same man. Another depiction crossing the Delaware. This is depicted in the 1851 portrait by Emmanuel Gottlieb as Prince Whipple. Close up. Next slide. There you go, close up. Wearing the red again. What is the communication? It's all there. All right? Next slide. This is another depiction from the 1800s. Washington and Bannaker as Benjamin Buckler, head overseer and carpenter for Washington. So he was an architect and a carpenter, but they just changed his name to Benjamin Buckler. Same person. Took this from J.A. Rogers. All right? Next slide. So, what are we saying? We're saying what they hide. What are they hiding? This is right downtown in Philadelphia. Freedom is a light for which many men have died in darkness. What are you saying? This is George Washington standing before a grave, right behind Independence Hall. And he represents the death of the Moors. That's all he represents. That's what he represents. Next slide. In unmarked graves within this square. Square represents what? lie thousands of unknown soldiers of Washington's army who died of wounds and sickness during the Revolutionary War. Now, the interesting thing about this park, it's called Washington Square. Sometimes we call it Congo Square, but it's also called the African Burial Ground, where the Africans used to come and dance behind Independence Hall, Caddy Corner. Now, it's a graveyard for Africans. George Washington is coming standing before a tomb, which we're about to see you. We're about to show you what else is there in that area. Because all it's doing is the symbols. When they go down there and they teach their little children, the ones who are the aristocracy of government, they ain't teaching them what we teach. Oh, let's go down to Congo Square. Because everything is symbolic. Everything is a memory. Next slide. So, this is the graveyard that's before George Washington. And it says, gotta get it, beneath this tomb rests a soldier who died in Washington's army. Who, oh man, I can't read what that says. Basically says who died to give you liberty. But what does it really mean? This means that in order for them to get their liberty, we had to die. Because there's nobody up under here. We can lift this up. Ain't no one soldier down here. Why would they put this where they placed it? We about to show you why they put it there. Everything is symbolic. Everything is ritual. Which we taught them that. But they use it for their own perverted mechanistic ways. Go ahead, next slide. Now, what's right across from that is a Catholic church, and the graveyard extends, the street cuts it off, but right across from that is a graveyard, a Moorish graveyard, which the whole thing is basically a Moorish graveyard. Symbolically and literally, some Moors got buried there. All right? So this is Trinity Church. Remember in the movie National Treasure, what was the church called?
Trinity.
Trinity Church, right? Mm-hmm. And what street was it on? Wall Street. This is Walnut Street. Interesting. Next slide. Check this out, what they put on here. Side by side, and this is right down there. You go to the Catholic thing, you can read on the little things that they're telling you about the history of the place. Side by side in their nameless grave, the lovers are sleeping. Under the humble walls of this little Catholic churchyard in the heart of the city, they lie unknown and unnoticed. Unknown and unnoticed. Next slide. The poem was based on the real tragedy of the Acadians. Stop. Who are the Acadians? You go do some American history. The Acadians are the people who got called Cajun. Cajun? Like Louisiana Cajun? Now this is a part that is very complex, but we don't have time to go into all of it. But in the upper parts of Massachusetts, Maine, and other places, we had tribes there who were called Wabanaki, Abenaki, which are another name for Lenape. And these people became Cajun people, but here's the key. Most of us think that we are here as a result of the transatlantic slave trade, and there were very few of us brought in this transatlantic slave trade. Very few. In fact, the largest slaveholding company in American history was Austin and Lorenz. Okay? And in total, they were the richest slave company. They only brought 20,000 slaves. And I'm saying this because what they were doing was stealing people from the areas, Pennsylvania, other places, bringing them on ships into the largest port, which was Charleston. And after they stripped them from their mothers and stripped them from their fathers and stripped them from their whole family, they would sell them back into other areas down south. So you don't know where you're from. You might have been from Virginia and you winded up in Charleston thinking that you was from West Africa. Or maybe you was from West Africa. You're lying. But for even a clearer history, which we didn't go over in the beginning, which is important, there's a book called The Berbers in America by Jules Cavett. And in that book, he did a documentary study of West African tribes and North Native American populations from the 1600s all the way up to the 1800s. You know what he found? 46 of the ancient names of tribes in West Africa marked exactly in name, linguistics, etc. with the tribes of North America. So you're dealing with the same people anyway. So this is what they did. They were exiled from Nova Scotia, which is the upper parts from Pennsylvania, upper Pennsylvania, all the way up to Maine by the British as punishment for their loyalty to France during the French and Indian War. Another name for the French and Indian War is the war between the Moors and Great Britain and their British subjects. Because when you're dealing with the French and Indian War, you're dealing with the French, not Napoleon, Toussaint Louverture, Dessalines, John Baptiste, who was the father of Jean Baptiste Charbonneau, who you see on the millennial coin with Cessany, his father. These are the French you're dealing with. So you're dealing with black French and the Moors of this land fighting against the British subjects, George Washington and Great Britain. That's what the French and Indian War is. We documented that.
King George.
That's right. That's right.
He was
Right. Next slide. I have three. Shechem-Exem, Philadelphia, capital of the Moors. Shechem-Exem is allegedly the name of a village where they met. But you see what's right there. They try to change it to Shak-Amexem. It's Shake. And Amexem, of course, all right, is the name of the land. One of the names for the land. You find the name Aksum where? In Ethiopia. Al-Maksum. All right? Go to the next slide, because I got to show you something. Philadelphia, Maneto. What is Maneto? Maneto is the Arabic word, an Arabic word for the energies, air, fire, water, and earth. When you write it in Algonquian, they use the term to mean God. Right here, get a close up on this verse. So you can see it, I'm gonna pass this around. This is the Algonquian determination of the word Manito, which meant the energies of God or God. You can see it. Now, if they put this on the seal for the city and they know that this language is actually written, what's called, they call it in the scholastic text, Palmyrian Arabic. I'm going to show you right behind it a comparison between some of the Arabic letters in the Palmyrian script found amongst the Native Americans. So when they put Maneto, this is on the mayor's, this is a depiction of it at the Municipal Services Building, but this is on the seal of the door of the mayor. Michael Nutter running in there, he don't even know this is talking about his ancestry. So Philadelphia and Manito represents the union between William Penn and the people who came and St. Tammany and the Lenape Moors. That's why they have that seal right there. There's other stuff there. All right? Next slide. So, Bannaker's history. Birthday. No real historical records on his birthday. Besides